What if everything you know about George Washington is a carefully constructed lie? What if the man on the dollar bill, the father of our country, the hero of the Revolution, never existed the way history claims? You've seen his portrait 1,000 times, but have you ever wondered why there are no paintings of Washington before 1772? Why his childhood friends never wrote about him? Why the most documented period in American history has a mysterious gap where its most important figure should be? This is the real story of George Washington, or rather, the stories, plural. Because the deeper you dig into the historical record, the more George Washingtons you find. Different heights, different ages, different faces. Who was George Washington really? Where did he come from? And most disturbing of all, was he even one person? Tonight, we're going to examine evidence that's been hiding in plain sight for 250 years. Evidence that suggests America's greatest hero might be America's greatest mystery. In 1962, a Library of Congress archivist named Dorothy Caldwell was assigned to catalog Washington's personal effects for the bicentennial preparations. She was perfect for the job, meticulous, patriotic, and devoted to preserving history. But after 6 months in the archives, Caldwell's reports became increasingly erratic. She noted discrepancies in Washington's handwriting that suggested multiple authors. She found letters dated from places Washington couldn't have been. She discovered portraits that showed subtle but undeniable differences in facial structure. Her final report, submitted December 15, 1962, contained a single, chilling conclusion. The historical record suggests not one George Washington, but several, operating under a carefully coordinated identity. Caldwell's report was immediately sealed. She was transferred to a different department. 3 months later, she vanished entirely. Her apartment was empty, her bank accounts untouched. It was as if Dorothy Caldwell had never existed at all, just like perhaps the real George Washington. Let's start with the official story. Born February 22, 1732 in Westmoreland County, Virginia, son of Augustine and Mary Ball Washington. Surveyor, soldier, statesman, first president. But here's where it gets strange. No birth certificate exists. The family Bible that supposedly recorded his birth, destroyed in a fire in 1781. Convenient. The church where he was supposedly baptized? No records survive. His childhood home? Burned down. Twice. For the most famous American who ever lived, George Washington left remarkably little trace of his early existence. But it gets stranger. Washington was supposedly 6'2", a giant for his time. Yet British military records from the French and Indian War describe Colonel Washington as of middling height. His own tailor's records, discovered in 1978, show 3 different measurements for Washington between 1775 and 1783. Not weight fluctuations, height differences of up to 4 inches. How does a man in his 40s grow and shrink by 4 inches? Evidence layer 1. The face that changed. Compare Washington's portraits chronologically. Not the idealized ones, the life studies. Charles Willson Peale painted Washington 7 times. Each shows subtle but distinct differences in bone structure. The nose bridge changes. The jaw width varies. The ear position shifts. Modern facial recognition software confirms what the eye suspects. These are different men. Evidence layer 2. The impossible timeline. Washington. His movements during key periods defy physics. December 1777. He's documented at Valley Forge, but letters in his hand are posted from Philadelphia 20 miles away on the same dates. Not once, 17 times. July 1755. Washington supposedly survived the Battle of Monongahela, where 4 bullets passed through his coat. British survivor accounts describe Washington dying in that battle. They describe his burial, yet he appears unharmed weeks later. Evidence layer. The Masonic mystery Washington was allegedly initiated into Freemasonry in 1752 at Fredericksburg Lodge. But lodge records from that period show no George Washington. They do show a Brother W, whose identity is listed as protected under sacred oath. Even stranger, multiple lodges across the colonies record simultaneous visits from Washington on the same dates. Either he could teleport or there was more than one. Evidence layer 4. The death that didn't add up. Washington's death in 1799 is one of history's most documented medical events. 5 doctors attended him, yet their accounts differ wildly. Dr. James Craik described Washington as dying peacefully. Dr. Elisha Dick reported violent convulsions. Dr. Gustavus Brown noted. Washington's body showed signs of poisoning. Most disturbing, Washington's body was sealed in the family vault before any family members could view it. Martha Washington never saw her husband's corpse. Evidence Layer 5, the genetic impossibility. In 2006, researchers attempted to extract DNA from Washington's hair samples held at Mount Vernon. The results, sealed by court order, but a lab technician leaked partial findings. The samples showed genetic markers from at least 3 distinct individuals. Mainstream historians dismiss these anomalies as conspiracy theories. Dr. Richard Harmon from Yale explains, documentation was inconsistent in the 18th century. Portraits were idealized. People's memories were fallible. The Mount Vernon Ladies Association maintains that Washington was exactly who history says he was. They point to thousands of letters, dozens of witnesses, and a well-documented life. These conspiracy theories, says Chief Historian Dr. Mary Thompson, dishonor the memory of our greatest American. The Smithsonian refuses to comment on the DNA tests, citing privacy concerns for living descendants. But what if the evidence is exactly what it appears to be? In 2018, artificial intelligence analysis of Washington's letters revealed something extraordinary. The handwriting shows consistent patterns, but the language patterns indicate at least 4 distinct authors. Same hand, different minds. How is that possible? Unless someone was trained to perfectly mimic Washington's handwriting while multiple people provided the thoughts. Even more unsettling, Washington's famous surveying records from his youth show knowledge of land features that weren't discovered until after his death. He mapped rivers that hadn't been explored. He noted mineral deposits that weren't found until the 1800s. How did young George Washington know things that nobody could have known? Here's the truth that explains everything. George Washington wasn't a person. He was a role, a carefully crafted identity inhabited by multiple individuals, all serving a greater purpose. Think about it. The perfect American hero. No verified childhood, no descendants, no DNA trail. Just a legend, built piece by piece, inhabited by selected individuals when needed. Who selected them? The same secret societies that designed the revolution itself. The Illuminati, founded in 1776, the same year Washington took command. The Rosicrucians, whose symbols appear throughout Mount Vernon. The mystery schools of ancient Egypt, whose initiation rites Washington allegedly underwent. They needed a figure who could unite the colonies, a symbol more than a man. So they created one. Multiple actors, one role. When one Washington fell at Monongahela, another took his place. When the president needed to be in 2 places at once, he was. The technology to pull this off? Ancient. The Templars did it. The assassins of Alamet perfected it. Create a legendary identity. Train multiple people to inhabit it. Build a myth that becomes more real than reality. This isn't unprecedented. Throughout history, certain figures seem too perfect, too ubiquitous, too legendary to be real. King Arthur. No contemporary records, but everyone knew him. Prester John, the Christian king who appeared across centuries and continents. Count Saint-Germain, the man who never aged and appeared at every crucial moment in European history. In Tibet, they have a name for this. Tulku. A role that passes from body to body, maintaining continuity of purpose across lifetimes. The Dalai Lama is the most famous example. Ancient Egypt perfected this with their pharaohs. The human died, but the god role continued. Same name, same identity, different flesh. Native American shamans speak of skinwalkers, beings who can assume any identity. They say the founders learned these arts. They say Washington was the first American skinwalker. The system almost collapsed in 1798. That's when the real crisis happened, not the one in history books. One of the Washingtons went rogue. Letters from John Adams, recently declassified, speak of a constitutional crisis of identity and Washington not being himself. Literally. For 3 months, there were 2 George Washingtons, one at Mount Vernon, following the script, one in Philadelphia, trying to reveal the truth. Alexander Hamilton had to intervene. The rogue Washington disappeared. Hamilton died in a duel 6 years later. Connected? The timing suggests yes. Martha Washington's diary from this period, kept locked away for 2 centuries, contains a single repeated line. "My husband is dead, but George remains." What did she know? What did she see? Why did she burn 40 years of correspondence before her death? Modern historians provide explanations: the height discrepancies, measurement errors, and age-related shrinkage. The facial differences, artistic interpretation and aging. The timeline impossibilities, confused dates, and poor record-keeping. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Harvard analyzed the handwriting variations. Completely normal for someone writing over decades. Hands change, especially with age and illness. The DNA results? Contamination, claims the official report. Multiple handlers over centuries corrupted the samples. But if it's also easily explained, why did the government classify Washington's medical records in 1799? Why are certain portraits in the Smithsonian never displayed? Why does Mount Vernon have rooms that no tourist has ever seen? Perhaps the truth is more nuanced. Maybe Washington was real but enhanced. One core person supplemented by doubles when needed. A real man who became a symbol, then allowed the symbol to outlive the man. Consider, Washington voluntarily gave up power, unprecedented in history, unless he knew the role would continue without him. Unless George Washington was bigger than any one person could be. The founders were creating more than a nation. They were creating a mythology. And every mythology needs its central figure. Washington wasn't just the first president, he was the first American god. And gods by definition cannot be merely human. Maybe that's why he's on the currency. Not to honor a man, but to maintain a spell. Every time you touch a dollar bill, you're participating in the ritual. You're keeping the egregore alive. What does this mean for you? If America's founding father was a carefully crafted illusion, what else about your history is constructed? What other truths are actually agreements to believe? Look at Washington's image on the dollar. Really look. Notice how his eyes seem to follow you? That's not artistic technique. That's programming. You've been trained since childhood to revere an image that might represent something far stranger than a Virginia planter. Every American child learns about Washington and the cherry tree. "I cannot tell a lie," he supposedly said. The irony is perfect. The man who couldn't tell a lie might himself be the greatest lie ever told. You live in a nation founded by mysteries, led by symbols, governed by myths made manifest. Your freedom might be real, but it was won by methods you were never meant to understand. The next time you see Washington's face on money, in paintings, in statues, ask yourself, which Washington are you looking at? The surveyor? The general? The president? Or something else entirely? Visit Mount Vernon. Stand in the empty tomb where his body supposedly lay. Feel the chill that has nothing to do with temperature. Notice how the guards watch you, not the exhibits. Wonder why certain questions make them nervous. The truth about George Washington isn't just hidden history. It's active mythology. It's alive. It's watching. It's waiting for someone to finally understand. So I ask you, who do you think George Washington really was? A man, a myth, a multiplicity, or something we don't even have words for yet? Share your thoughts below. Tell us what you've noticed about Washington that doesn't add up. Because if enough of us start seeing the patterns, maybe we'll finally understand what really happened at the birth of our nation. They say George Washington couldn't tell a lie. But what if George Washington was the lie? And what if that lie is the foundation everything else is built on? The father of our country might not be who you think. He might not even be a who at all. He might be a what, and that what might still be operating today, wearing different faces, serving the same ancient purpose. Remember, in America, the myths are real. The question is, are the men